In today's video, we're going to see the director of the FBI, Kash Patel, talking about the Southern Poverty Law Center, or SPLC, clinging to relevance by funding hate groups like the KKK in order to churn a profit. They're supposed to be a NGO that takes donations in to fight against hate crimes and stuff like that, and they're the ones perpetuating them by funding these organizations that were all but extinguished before they started funding them. Let's take a look.
We're here today is to announce what the general just told you. The Southern Poverty Law Center, in a massive, sweeping indictment, has been charged with allegations of fraud and using the banking system to perpetrate that fraud. I just want to talk about a couple of brief things here. The Southern Poverty Law Center themselves advertise to raise money to dismantle violent extremist groups for a period of at least a decade. They use their donor network to raise money to purportedly dismantle violent extremist groups. However, the SPLC, the Southern Poverty Law Center, used the money they raised from their donor network to actually pay the leadership of these very groups.
Well, yeah, how are you going to maintain your relevancy as a organization that fights against hate groups if there's no hate groups to fight against? They have to keep some of them alive, some of them going. And don't forget, let's not forget, because the media and people have been so brainwashed that they say that conservatives, Republicans, people that lean right are the racist fascists. But let's not forget the people that had fought to maintain slavery were the liberals. The people who, and the Democrats, the people who fought on the side of the KKK or who were part of the KKK were liberals. So they're literally a left wing group. I understand years have passed, but it seems like their politics have not changed whatsoever, because they're still funding these organizations through groups that are meant to remove and get rid of these hate groups. Absolutely fucking disgusting.
I just want to say that again. They used the fraudulently raised money by lying to their donor network, thousands of Americans, to go ahead and actually pay the leadership of these supposed violent extremist groups. The groups, as the general laid out, include the Ku Klux Klan, the United Klans of America, Unite to Right, National Alliance, the National Socialist Movement, the Aryan Nation Motorcycle Club, and the National Socialist Party of America, and also the American Front. In at least one of these matters, our investigation revealed that funds were used to facilitate the commission of further state and federal offenses, totaling over $3 million. Furthermore, our investigation revealed that the Southern Poverty Law Center, on top of perpetuating this widespread, decade-long, multi-million-dollar fraud, conducted more criminal activity. They attempted to hide their criminal activity from our financial banking network. They set up shell companies and entities around America so that the financial institutions that we rely on as everyday Americans were deceived in believing that money was not coming from the Southern Poverty Law Center in the perpetration of this scheme and fraud, but rather fictitious entities they stood up to perpetuate.
Imagine that the Southern Poverty Law Center had set up shell companies so that it would be harder for the government to find out that they were funding these groups. Imagine what would happen if the government wasn't allowed to do these kinds of audits, right? Like in Canada, they're trying to restrict the conservatives' ability to request research done into things that they think might be fraudulent, right? The liberals want to restrict what opposition is allowed to do in terms of this type of research. So imagine now if the government in the US did not have the authority or the ability or even the funding. They were lacking funding to do this type of stuff. That's why things like defund the police is so detrimental because not only does it get rid of law enforcement on the ground that are meant to keep people safe, but it also defunds entities like this from investigating fraud, like the stuff that Nick Shirley has been uncovering, like this stuff that Kash Patel is talking about. They want to be able to get away with it, so they're changing the rule book to make it harder and harder to find this type of fraud.
This ongoing fraud. This is a serious and egregious violation of a group that purported to dismantle violent extremist groups, but in turn actually only fueled the hatred. This is an important case brought by President Trump's administration. We're thankful to the president for his leadership and funding of not just the FBI and DOJ, but his commitment to go out there and wipe out fraud and conspiracy and waste and abuse wherever it occurs, including the Southern Poverty Law Center. Even though this money was made to appear to be coming from legitimate people and legitimate entities, we at the FBI, with our great partners at the Department of Justice and in the state of Alabama, were able to comb through a decade worth of material, a scheme that took a decade to build, so that we were able to follow the money, because money never lies, and they got caught. As the Attorney General said, these charges are varying, they are widespread and wide-ranging, and this investigation is very much ongoing. Today, we're here to announce the charges of the Southern Poverty Law Center, and this investigation and the individuals who are responsible will be brought to justice. Thank you, General.
Wow, well, good job. Although the presidency in the US has had some shaky things going on, I'm glad to see that at least they're able to uncover this type of fraud at the FBI and that they're actually putting taxpayers' money to good use when it comes to stuff like this. I'm so happy they were able to uncover this fraud. They need to continue doing this type of research and try to clean up the US, and hopefully they can do the same thing in Canada with whatever organizations we have here. Because if you have power and no checks and balances, you have a disaster. You end up with a tyrannical authoritarian dictatorship in no time, right? Like, I'm going to keep bringing up these points. The thing that happened during COVID with the trucker convoy and the government putting a stop to that was deemed unlawful. Trudeau did not have the right to do that. I think two courts had said that it was unlawful. They appealed it. I think now they're trying to appeal it a third time at Supreme Court. If you do not have checks and balances for power, you end up with overly tyrannical politicians, overly tyrannical lawmakers, overly tyrannical bureaucrats that reign above all. And that is not what our country stands for. That's not what the Americans stand for either. We cannot let stuff like this happen. We need to keep making our voices heard. If you enjoyed the video, be sure to like, comment, subscribe, and have a good day. Peace.